Ladies and gentlemen, do not adjust your television or computer screens. It is the return of Mark's Side of the Ring. I know we've taken a little bit of a hiatus, but we are back. Well, I'm back. I'm Fred DeCourt here for Mark's Side of the Ring. Miguel and Tim are currently taking a break, and I hope to have them back on here at some point in the future. But I wanted to continue the podcast. I wanted to keep trying and put content out there for you guys. A lot has been going on in the wrestling world, and I just felt like it was necessary to talk about it. So we're going to do just that. Welcome to Mark's Side of the Ring. If you're new to the show, a little bit different. Usually there's a couple of us talking some wrestling. I'm going to be handling the duties for the time being, and I hope you guys enjoy the show. So like I was saying, a lot going on in the wrestling world. Obviously, if you've been paying any attention to anything going on in wrestling, you'll know that. So I'm going to start off, though, real quick, just to go over a little bit, since it's been so long since we last spoke. I think either Money in the Bank was going to be happening or had happened, but a lot has definitely happened since then. So I had the amazing pleasure to go to SummerSlam a few weeks ago in Las Vegas, and what an experience it was. So I figured I'd talk about that a little bit, even though it was a couple weeks ago and not very recent, but recent enough. I thought SummerSlam was a fantastic show. I really thought WWE put on just an amazing showcase that night. It really did feel like their WrestleMania this year. I had the privilege to go to WrestleMania this year also in Tampa, and that was a great time and a great experience. But just having the full stadium this time and the marquee matches that were on the card, you could just tell this one felt even bigger than WrestleMania had this year, given the circumstances of the world. Favorite match of the night, I think, undoubtedly has to go to Seth and Edge. I thought they put on what, some people like to, refer to as a clinic. In my opinion, best match of the night. And with the exception of the triple threat from WrestleMania between Roman Reigns, Edge, and Daniel Bryan, I think it's the best match of the year so far. And I'm very excited that we're going to see a rematch of that tomorrow night. This is Thursday as we're recording, but Friday night SmackDown from Madison Square Garden, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later on in the podcast. So, yeah, I thought they had a great match. I mean, the entrance for Edge was tremendous. To hear that Brood music in an arena or stadium was awesome. I never thought I'd get to hear that song again live, and I thought it was a great touch. I like how Edge has really kind of implemented that into the storyline with Seth, that he needed to go back to that place, to that dark side of his character, to face Edge and to beat him, and he did. I thought it was a very nice touch. Obviously the Becky Lynch surprise was awesome. It sounded great on TV. I went back and rewatched it, but there's just like anything with WWE, there's nothing like it live, and that was a prime example. I mean, there was nothing like that live. A lot of fans were bummed when they found out that Sasha Banks couldn't compete against Bianca Belair. That was an anticipated match, obviously. And there had been some rumors, but they kept promoting it. So normally they would have, it would have been pulled earlier, but they went with it like it was happening. So I thought, well, maybe, these dirt sheets really don't know. And, she is competing. Not everything you read on the internet, believe it or not, is true. But sure enough, it got canceled and Carmella came out and was the replacement. And I remember being like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Like, really? This is what we're doing? Ugh, I was bummed because I was looking forward to that match. And don't get me wrong, I like Carmella and she's great. And, her and Bianca had a good little feud, prior. But we'd seen it done it. It didn't need to happen again, let alone as a replacement for Sasha Banks. And then lo and behold, there goes that music to the man. And the crowd erupted. She looked tremendous. She's only post-pregnancy, maybe, I think, like 8 months at this point. I think she had her and Seth had their baby in December, so this is August. Looked great, and you kind of knew where this was going. I didn't know if she was going to win it right there that night, and she did, and in quick fashion, which a lot of people were unhappy about. People, of course, wrestling fans had to find something to complain about, and they did, but it was storytelling, right? The process of storytelling is something that nobody really wants to enjoy anymore. They want boom, 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 boom. They don't want long term, which is a problem, I think. But they were going somewhere with it. They were turning Becky heel. That was something she wanted to do. Now, whether I agree with that decision or not is a whole nother story. But she wanted to turn heel. I guess WWE felt like, well, we don't want to say no to her. Let's give her the opportunity to have a heel run. And the purpose of this was to build sympathy for Bianca Belair, which it did. People felt sorry for her and were upset that she was treated like that she was beat in 26 seconds. So I think it's working tremendously. And now she's going to have her rematch at Extreme Rules. It was announced on SmackDown last week. We're going to have a contract signing this Friday. And I'm not sure she'll win it back at Extreme Rules, but I do think that eventually Bianca will get it back and will have her moment. And this was all just part of the story. You can't just look at SummerSlam. You got to look ahead and where they're going with it. And I think, like I said, she will win it back eventually, and all will be right in the world. But an amazing return for Becky Lynch. And speaking of amazing returns, if one return trumped Becky's return, if there was one person to do it, then it would have to be the Beast, Brock Lesnar. John Cena and Roman Reigns putting on an amazing match. A prime example of a WWE main event, right? Just two big guys going at it, slugging it out, and just it was beautiful. And I expected nothing less from them. And Roman wins, which I think was the right call. I love John, but it was, Roman's unstoppable right now. And he's having his moment. He's holding up the title. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, Roman's moment, blah, blah, blah. And I did not expect this at all. And Brock's music hit. And out he comes with ponytail and all. I had seen that he had it, but I honestly didn't think if he ever returned that he would show up with it to TV, and he sure did. A little bit of a different look, the ponytail, is wearing jeans and the tank, a little bit different, but I like that. I think it's cool that he came back with a little bit of a different look, and stared down Roman Reigns and Paul. I mean, if faces told stories, boy, Paul, you could just see the fear and the uncertainty in his eyes. He was damn near in tears. He didn't know what to do. You talk about being in a rock and a hard place. He was. I thought it was really well done. It tells a great story of where does Paul lie. I think it's kind of like we've been waiting for this moment. Like, what happens if and when Brock comes back? Now, what does Paul do? And that's something we're going to have to find out. But, we've seen Roman and Brock a couple of times, 2015 at Mania, 2018 at Mania, and then, they had a few throughout the year. Actually, at SummerSlam, their last match was in 2018. And people were kind of done with it at the time, but now it's a whole different beast, no pun intended. And I am so hyped for it. I'm so ready for it. To have a face Brock, which he really hasn't been at all since his original return in 2012. A little bit here and there. Maybe he was, portrayed as a good guy, but most of it has been heel. And now with Roman as the heel and Brock as the face, tells a whole different story. And I mean, with Paul Heyman in the middle, it's just, this might be their best feud out of any of them that they had, So that was really cool. Great way to close SummerSlam. Really left the crowd on a high note because everybody was just jacked, shocked and very excited for what um, the future was going to be, especially on the SmackDown side of things. So overall, SummerSlam, great show. Had a great time in Las Vegas. Made it back alive, thank God. And yeah, it was tremendous. To say I went to WrestleMania and SummerSlam this year is really cool. And Survivor Series is going to be in Brooklyn, so I'll be attending that too. So to go from last year going to only like 2 shows and having everything else canceled and it being really bleak to now this year going to 3 of the 4 classic pay-per-views is really cool. I'm very, very excited about that. So speaking of SummerSlam, those moments from SummerSlam weren't the only things to happen, as I'm sure you all know, on that weekend, because the buzz in the wrestling world actually started Friday night during Rampage, when, believe it or not, somehow, some way, after years and years and years of hope and probably mostly at this point just desperation, that CM Punk, would make a return to the pro wrestling world. And he did. Now, I will start this off by saying that everybody knows I am a WWE guy through and through. I didn't even watch AEW for a long time. I caught a couple other pay-per-views and I started watching it a little more regularly once they went to once NXT went to Tuesday nights. I would watch, Dynamite on Wednesday if I had nothing going on. So I've been watching it a little bit regularly, but everybody knows that WWE through and through, not much of an AEW guy. But I have to say that I was in awe of CM Punk's return to the wrestling world. It was very, very, I don't know how to put it. It was almost like, the saying never say never, but this was one of those things where you kind of went never. And to see it happening was, you could have a tear in your eye like that guy did, in the crowd, which I thought was great. That's real emotion right there. People don't understand that you get, over the years, you get emotionally invested into these characters, into these people, and they come into your lives every week. And then when they're not in your lives anymore every week, it's like, it's really, it's weird, and you want them back. And we got that Friday in August on the 20th on Rampage. Tremendous, tremendous moment. I mean, that crowd, boy, they couldn't have been any more jacked. It was they're calling it the worst kept secret. Everybody kind of had an idea that this was going to happen on that date. They booked the United Center and they sold out the United Center on a rumor. I can't imagine what that crowd would have done if he didn't show up. So thank God he did. And he started the show off. I mean, as soon as they went live, that crowd was chanting CM Punk, CM Punk, CM Punk. I guess they could have waited the whole night and had them come out. But you know what? Sometimes you just got to give it to them right away. Boom. Here it is. And they did. And you could legitimately tell that he was having the time of his life and that he was enjoying it. And that's something that CM Punk had stopped doing, is he had stopped enjoying the wrestling business. So it was nice to see him enjoy it. Now, I will say I wish that it was in WWE. I do wish that he made his return, on WWE programming, and we would get to see, a match the likes of him and Roman, or him and Seth Rollins, or him and AJ Styles, or, him and Riddle. There's so many, scenarios I would have liked. And just to see him back on WTV would have been tremendous. But you know what? It wasn't going to happen. So the fact that we're getting a return for him alone makes me happy. even though it's not the company I wish it was for, still a really cool moment. And he came out of the gate and challenged Darby Allin right away to a match, and I thought that was cool. Not really much of a Darby fan, only because I wasn't too familiar with his work. Like I said, I never really paid much attention to AEW. I did see the match that he did with Sting's first match when they did the cinematic thing. I think it was at Revolution. And I'd seen a little bit of his work then, but not much. But I knew Darby had called Punk out kind of when he, innuendo when he said, this is AEW, and even if you are the best in the world, it doesn't mean you can, come right to the top or something like that. So it was kind of like, oh. So Punk called him out, and Darby and Sting were in the rafters. I thought it was cool, and set up a match for All Out, which is what I'm going to get to now. All Out. Oof. Wow, that was something. Just this past Sunday, I did watch it, and I have to admit, it's the best showing as far as pay-per-view is concerned that I've seen AEW put out. It may be their best show in history. I was very impressed. I have to say I was very impressed. And for me to give praise to AEW is not something I always do, but when I call a spade a spade. When I see something that I think is good, I will admit it. I thought him and Darby put on a great match. I thought Punk looked great in his first match back. A little bit winded, but my God, you haven't been in the ring in 7 years. I mean, you come back after 7 months and it's easy to be winded. So I thought for 7 years he looked pretty damn good. Changed up his look a little bit. Was a little disappointed in that. When you're used to seeing somebody with some kind of look, with the trunks, and he had the tights, but really doesn't matter at this point. Maybe he didn't feel comfortable putting his underwear on out there in front of millions, as he has said that he had to do. But whatever, it was still great. Again, him and Darby killing it. Punk got the win, as he should have. Not to say that Darby won't get a win from him down the road, but it's Punk's first match back. He's got to win it. Now, the main thing that's going to stand out at All Out is something that, speaking of Punk and saying, wishing it was on WWE TV, what a moment, but what a moment that I wish again happened in WWE or stayed in WWE. We see Adam Cole come out. Now, there had been rumors that Daniel Bryan was going to debut in AEW at All Out. So people were kind of expecting Daniel Bryan to come out. Now, Adam Cole, obviously, rumors have been swirling that he was going to show up in AEW because you all know the story with his contract expiring, signing a small extension to get through TakeOver on SummerSlam weekend, had a great match with Kyle O'Reilly. But there'd been kind of no news that, Adam had re-signed. And so it was kind of very up in the air, but it looked likely that he was going to go to AEW. If he hadn't re-signed with WWE, most likely was going there, but we didn't know when. So Kenny Omega cuts a promo, and everybody's expecting, okay, this is Daniel Bryan's coming out, right? Everybody's ready. And then Adam Cole comes out. And it's like, what? Literally. That's what, And I was shocked. And I was like, wow. I was like, that's a swerve. Everybody's expecting Bryan, and they give us Adam Cole, and they're saving Bryan. And Adam Cole comes out, joins the Elite, turns heel, and then Daniel Bryan comes out. It's like, what? Both of them? Literally, with that high pitch, both of them. I was screaming. I was excited, but I was also upset because being a WWE guy, you hate to see two of the bigger stars leaving. So it was kind of bittersweet. It was a cool moment, but I was upset that they had left WWE. Especially Daniel Bryan. I mean, my God, what a journey he's been through. But you know what? I have to say, both guys in the media scrum after the pay-per-view put over WWE, said they had a great time there, great relationships there. They just felt like it was something they needed to do and, change course a little bit. And I won't be surprised if we see them back in WWE at some point down the road, especially Daniel Bryan. I could see, go to TNA for TNA, AEW for a couple of years, and then come back to WWE, come back home. I think we will see that. At least Daniel Bryan. Maybe not Adam Cole, but definitely Daniel Bryan. So I was a little bummed about that, but it was like I said, still an amazing moment. And it's interesting to see where we go from here, with the debuts of Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole and CM Punk. And obviously Malachi Black had recently debuted, and Andrade not long before that, within the last couple of months. And now obviously Bray Wyatt being heavily rumored to show up in AEW since being released at the end of July. That'd be a huge coup for them. And, you got to scratch your head with that, with WWE releasing Bray Wyatt. They're releasing all these big talents, and like, they're not getting guys to stay on their own, let alone now you're releasing guys that didn't want to leave necessarily. Got to question those tactics, but I'm not Vince McMahon, nor am I Nick Khan, so I guess they feel they're making the right call, and I hope so. I really do hope so. But interesting times certainly lie ahead. Interesting times right now. It's fun to see the wrestling world be exciting. And it's fun to see people talking about wrestling and be engaged in it. Before AEW really got started, when there's no competition, it's kind of like, oh, okay, cool. They're doing that on the wrestling show. Oh, that's cool. Oh, I heard this, But when there's competition, it's like real, like cutthroat, and like people are really like, oh, what are they gonna do? Or what are they gonna do? How are they gonna react? How he's going there? Or he's it. People want the Monday Night Wars. Now that will never happen again. That particular scenario was a once in a lifetime thing. Won't happen again. But that doesn't mean we can't have competition and we can't have excitement in the wrestling world, and we can't have guys jumping ship. A little bit different now because contracts are way more secure than they were, back in the 90s. Things that happened because of the Monday Night Wars have changed, the way business is done now. So I'm interested to see where this goes. I'm interested to see, people aren't talking about the other side of the coin. What happens maybe when some of these AEW contracts come up within a year or two, and people may jump ship to WWE, So there's a lot that's going to be going on. The next couple of years are going to be really interesting and a lot of fun. It's a good time to be a wrestling fan. So, yeah, All Out, I have to say, was a really good show, followed up by, I thought, a really solid Dynamite. I'm having the opportunity to go to Dynamite next Wednesday from the Prudential Center in Newark, finally. This was originally supposed to happen in March of 2020, but then with the pandemic, that got canceled and it got rescheduled like 3 times after. So it's finally happening, and I'm kind of glad that it kept getting postponed, because now we're getting CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, and Adam Cole all on the same night, with Adam Cole having his first match in AEW. So pretty cool that I'll get to be there for that. The first Dynamite in the tri-state area. So really cool. And speaking of attending shows, what I wanted to talk about next is tomorrow night, WWE returns for the first time in almost 2 years to Madison Square Garden. They were supposed to have a show there last March as well that got canceled because of the pandemic. And now it has been, everything finally, getting somewhat back to normal. And SmackDown will be there live tomorrow night, Friday, whenever, depending on when you're watching this. Friday night SmackDown live from the Garden. It's going to be a super SmackDown. Guys and girls from Raw will also be on hand. They've announced so far, like I referenced earlier, Edge and Seth Rollins in a rematch from SummerSlam. I'm very excited about that. Like I said, their match at SummerSlam was tremendous. I'm so excited to see a rematch live from the Garden. Bianca and Becky Lynch are going to have their contract signing, so how that's going to go. That'll be some crazy segment for their match at Extreme Rules for the SmackDown Women's Championship. And Brock Lesnar in the house. So going to get to see Brock Lesnar live and in living color, baby. Tomorrow night, Friday night, Brock Lesnar, Madison Square Garden. And they just announced also, just this afternoon, the Usos will defend the tag team championship, the SmackDown tag team championship, against the Street Profits. So that's going to be another good match. I'm excited for that. And who knows what else? I know locally, John Cena is going to be there. I don't think he'll be on TV, but he's going to wrestle a dark match afterwards. It's going to be John Cena and the Street Profits versus the Bloodline. So that'll be cool. And also locally advertised is Bianca Belair versus Becky Lynch. So we'll see. Sometimes these dark matches they advertise and then they don't always end up happening, but it'll be interesting to see. But Cena's going to be there. So that's going to be really cool too. So a hell of a card. They always put on an amazing show at the Garden. It's home. It's the world's most famous arena. It really is. I've had the opportunity to go to the Garden for many, many shows, and it never gets old. There's always a special feeling when you're in that building. I've been to, many different arenas, stadiums. There's something special about the Garden. Vince McMahon Sr. Had a quote. Vince's father had a quote that the Garden will always be the Garden in his accent that he had there. And it will. The Garden will always be the Garden. No matter how many big venues they've ran and will run, no matter how many cities and states and countries they go to, the Garden will always be the Garden. So I'm excited that they're going back there. And for TV, they don't really do TV there that much anymore because of the cost. They did run Raw and SmackDown there, which was a big deal a couple of years ago. That was really cool. Got to go to both of those shows. And I'm glad that they're going back for SmackDown, because we all know SmackDown is definitely better than Raw, but we won't get into that right now. That's another story for another day. But a big SmackDown tomorrow night from the Garden. I will be there live. And I will come back next week with a report on the Garden, and how the show was. Hopefully it's a good report. I think it will be. And we'll see what else happens within the wrestling world. Like I said, I'm going to Dynamite. So I'll have a report next week on tomorrow night's SmackDown, as well as next week's Dynamite. We'll compare the two and see which one was better than the other. I think you'll know where my answer is going to lie, but you never know. So again, everybody, thank you for checking it out. The podcast, again, a little bit different, and as things go, we're going to change things a little bit here and try and make it as entertaining for you as possible to just talk about some wrestling. Hoping to have some guests on here in the future. Do some interviewing with some people, and again, hopefully Miguel and Tim will be back one day on here. So I guess you could say it's Mark's side of the ring, because there's only one of us now. Even though there's still Mark's, I'm the only one on this side of the ring. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. We will see you next week here on Mark's Side of the Ring.